What's going on, everyone? Today, I'm out steelhead fishing with Cody Herman of Day One Outdoors. Cody is a professional guide in the Pacific Northwest, and his mission is to teach others on Day One and give them the knowledge and skills to go out and catch steelhead and salmon on their own. Cody has a television show, Day One Outdoors, on the local cable channel, and his mission rung true as I started to watch his shows last year. As someone newer into steelhead fishing, I can appreciate the mission of Day One Outdoors. So I reached out for a potential steelhead trip in 2020 to learn from one of the best in the Northwest and to be a part of Day One, steelhead fishing. For myself personally, I'd never landed a steelhead in my life, so I would consider myself a very beginner steelhead fisherman. Floating down the river, I was able to ask Cody so many questions about water speeds, locations, conditions, using plugs, how to rig for bobber dogging. Before the trip, I had never done a drift boat trip down a river, so plenty of new and first time things for me, including fishing for plugs for steelhead, spin and glow setup, and fishing beads and plastic worms. More to come on the worms. From the start, Cody made it clear to ask as many questions as possible. Coaching and mentoring while rowing down the river, I can truly appreciate how amazing of a guide and person Cody is, and how different he is from the other guides I've fished with or been around. I have to admit, I was a bit nervous at first, so my casting wasn't the greatest to start off the morning. But Cody was patient and coached me through how to cast and where down the river. And by the end of the day, I felt comfortable getting the bobber and the beads or worms in the right spot of the fishing hole. After drifting down for a couple hours, we had our first bobber down.
Did it again. That's fish! Oh, it came off! Oh.
Here, I'll keep going. I'll keep drifting down.
I thought that was a fish when it went under. Alright, let me see those beads again. I thought that was a fish first. Let me see those beads real quick though. Let me see the beads.
But the fish wasn't hooked great, 0 for 1, but plenty more river to go. Shortly after that, we swung into a hole and my rod bent over, but it wasn't a hard steelhead bend like you normally see. I reeled up and sure enough, a sucker fish. So we let it go. No sushi tonight. Floating and casting down the river, the calmness of the water, seeing the bald eagle soar in the trees above, I was in heaven. And I have to say, I'm hooked, and I want to go on more float trips after steelhead. About midway through the day, we stopped for lunch and the fun really started. When we came into the next fishing hole, we took a break for a couple minutes to grab some lunch, stretch our legs, go to the bathroom, and I didn't have waders with me, so Cody had me fish from the boat. And he set me up with worms on a bobber dogging setup for this spot. And then the first cast I put out there, the worm had wrapped itself around the float, so I reeled it back in. Bit about a 45-degree angle, casted right out, let it drift for a couple seconds, and then the bobber went straight down, and I reeled up right to the float. And unlike most steelhead where it's a big strike and the rod tends to bend over, this was a light strike. I felt pressure consistently as I was reeling in, and it was weird because I didn't think at first that there was a fish on the line, and then all of a sudden it kind of just did a couple tugs, and then Cody was like, oh man, that's a fish. And so then I started to get really wobbly legs, and I started to kind of freak out but also get excited, but actually more freak out than anything internally because I'd hooked this fish and I didn't want to lose it. So it scared me a little bit, but kept reeling, and we kept getting it into the boat. And I was talking to Cody about, okay, what angle should I have the rod pointed? How do you want me to bring the fish in? Do we need to tighten the drag at all? Just making sure that I was doing everything right, because up until this point, I'd never actually landed a steelhead. So I was asking a ton of questions in the moment. My legs were super shaky. And after probably a couple minutes of fighting the fish, got it close about 6 or 7 times, kept getting it close, and then the buck steelhead kept taking back off, kind of going back out to the river. So it was holding consistent pressure. He kept saying pressure, pressure, pressure. So I was consistently hanging onto the rod, keeping pressure, and eventually reeled it, got it up nice and easy, and then just kind of dragged it towards him, and he netted that sucker, and man, we hoot and hollered. It was freaking awesome. And then I was able to step out of the boat and then walked up to him and actually thanked him and told him that it was the first steelhead I ever landed. And it shocked him a little bit, and he was super excited for me. He gave me a big fist pump, and we looked at it. Really nice hatchery buck steelhead. Really nice color on it. Chromed out really well. Had a small slash on the back on one of the sides. I think the right side, probably from a sea lion, but this fish was new in the system and totally chromed out. And I was super excited. We got some photos. We did a little underwater video where we let the steelhead go back in. And I got to hold and release my first wild steelhead and first steelhead overall. It was freaking awesome. I was on high the rest of the day, and probably since the 2 days after that, I was still talking about it and thinking about it. And as a memento, Cody actually gave me the worm that I caught it on, and I'm gonna hold on to this thing for a really long time. In fact, I might take it with me as a good luck charm, put it in my pocket. But it kind of got beat up, as you can see here. It got teeth marks and all twisted, and that fish put up quite a fight, and it was just awesome. I had no expectations going in. We hit this spot on the second cast. I flung it out there. The float was nice and perfect, and that bobber went down. I was a little bit slow to get on the reel, but it didn't strike as hard as a normal steelhead did. But sure enough, there was one on there, and he was hooked good. When we got him into the net, he was hooked really good. It wasn't like it was a light hook and the hook just popped out. It took us a second to get the hook out. So it was just amazing. I can't thank Cody enough for teaching me and guiding me through, talking back and forth as we were trying to land this thing, and him giving me, how to bring it in, let the fish go. It jumped once. And the crazy thing about it is my GoPro had died about 10 minutes prior, and the GoPro had died about 10 minutes prior, and I didn't put a new battery in when we had stopped and we went out to fish. So I didn't get any footage of me actually hooking and catching the steelhead. I was, afterwards, I was just like, oh my gosh, what did I do? But it happens. Luckily, we got the photos, we got the underwater footage. It was just freaking awesome. And Cody helped me a lot in that sequence of landing it, but also just helping me understand the techniques. And I had never fished with worms before, and I can't thank him enough for that coaching and being patient with me on bringing that fish in. And he was super ecstatic too. We'd had one decent bite before then where the fish, was slightly hooked. We didn't get a good hook set on it, but that fish was hooked hard, and it was ecstatic. And being my first steelhead is something I'll never forget, and the memory of that and keeping my little worm with me for the memento, it was just freaking awesome. So that was a good midpoint of the day to have some lunch and celebrate and get with my first steelhead. It was just freaking awesome.
Down the river we went again, hoping for more chances at a chrome steelhead. Unfortunately, we didn't hook another fish on the remainder of the drift down the river, but hey, that's fishing. I had an amazing time on the river and learned so much from Cody. I'm hoping to use the information he provided to go out and catch my first keeper steelhead, or even steelhead number 2. And the next time I connect with him in person, I hope to share my success stories of my latest steelhead thanks to his knowledge and coaching during our trip. Thank you, Cody, for helping me land my first steelhead and everything you shared on the trip. I owe you a ton, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for being an amazing guide and a mentor today.
Thank you guys for watching my steelhead fishing trip with Cody Herman of Day One Outdoors. Hopefully this video gets you guys inspired out there. If you've never caught a steelhead and landed one, I know that feeling, but with a little technique and some tips, you can get that first one off your back and get a little memento and a little good luck charm to go with it. But thank you guys for watching, and as always, the outdoors is a gift. Share it with others.